The Atari Gamestation Pro was a promising retro gaming console, but it kinda sucked. Does the recent update make it better? Hello and welcome back to Gears and Tech. You saw us on a different video unbox the Gamestation Pro. I had a lot of concerns about that console and I outlined those in detail on that video. But a lot of people were saying it's actually a pretty good retro console. So we loaded up an SD card, had a look, and found out that it actually kind of sucks at being a retro console as well. So that begs the question, with the recent update, is it better? And would I change my mind on the decision to purchase one or to have one in my retro gaming collection? This is what we want to talk about today. Before we get too far into this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below. If you've seen some of our content already and have not subscribed, we want you to join our community. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's get back to the video. Now beside me here is the Atari Flashback console, and the reason the Atari Flashback is here is because at the end of the second video where we talked about using the system as a retro emulator, I said, this thing kind of sucks and I'm sending it back. And I did, so I don't even have one anymore. But since then, they've released an update and I want to look at that update now because you guys, the viewers, have asked, have I changed my mind? Let's talk about real quickly the reasons why I did not like the Gamestation Pro so we can go in and talk about the update and see if it fixes any of those problems. First of all, as its intended purpose, a retro Atari console, it does not solve any problems for me. The design is somewhat nostalgic in the sense that they used design cues from the Atari to incorporate it in, but the Atari never had RGB lighting and it never had this small form factor. It's not even in the shape of an Atari system that I've ever owned. Second of all, the controller sucks. Not only does it add RGB lighting, which it never had, but the form factor just doesn't suit the Atari consoles. This right here better emulates the retro console in just the way it looks and feels, even with this rubber pad on here and the way it clicks. The controller that comes with the Gamestation Pro has clicky buttons, it has noticeable lag, and it's just wrong on so many different levels. So as an Atari retro console, total fail. But the redeeming quality is that it plays other ROMs. It plays Game Boy, it plays Nintendo, it plays Genesis, it plays Super Nintendo. So who wouldn't want a retro Atari console that also plays those other retro consoles in their living room? And that's when we started to explore that. Other YouTubers such as Gen X Grown Up showed us how to install 10,000 games from your favorite retro consoles on the Atari Gamestation. And he outlined problems in how that worked. Most notably, there were no subfolders, so all of your games just were in a list with multiple pages of games that you just had to tab through very, very slowly. The other problem was lack of documentation for controllers that you can use. You can use your Xbox controller, and reportedly you can also use your PlayStation 5 controller now, but support is very hit and miss, and it's not clear exactly which controllers work and which ones don't. Overall, the emulation experience was lackluster at best. It required a lot of troubleshooting and work, and there were just, quite frankly, a lot better gaming consoles available that would do the same thing. So in comes the Gamestation Pro firmware update. Let's have a look at what's included in the update, and we'll pick apart if this turns the Atari Gamestation Pro into that retro emulation console that you're hoping that it is. Now this comes straight from the MyArcade website. This is update version 1.3, and here are the release notes. First off, game instructions added for each Atari game. Updated game list, menu navigation, aspect ratio updated for certain Atari arcade games, enhancements for micro SD card. Now that's interesting because we were playing the emulation on the SD card. Have they fixed the SD card to work as a better emulation system? We're going to find out shortly. FAQ added to the settings menu, bug fixes, optimization for improved performance. That's good because I actually had concerns about the performance of the system in the first place. As an Atari retro emulating system, it kind of sucked. Audio now plays through left and right speakers. This is actually pretty good. So the output on the system is a HDMI output. Users who have a home theater system notice that sound was only playing through the left channel of their system and not the right. There was no great reason why they didn't output to the right channel as well. Probably they didn't really think about it because audio on the Atari was mono anyway, so it typically would go to the left speaker, and that would have been the truest recreation of the system. But nowadays with stereo TV speakers and stereo systems, it's just a problem. So they've fixed that. They've said this is a bug. It now plays through both left and right speakers. The one thing I don't know is it stereo sound or is it just mono left and right? Let me know in the comments if you have one, if you've tried it, and if it is stereo sound or if it's just mono sound. Also, the factory reset removes games from the recent tab, which kind of makes sense. If you want to reset the console, you should remove all of the play history, all of the recent tabs and all that. So that's clearly a bug. Tech tips. Now this is interesting. Make sure your console is connected to a 5 volt 2 amp USB-A port. Now when we plugged it in and tested it first, I plugged in over here to the USB port on my computer and it did not provide enough power. It did not power on properly. It suffered rebooting and slowdowns. When I switched the power supply to a proper power supply, it performed a lot better. Probably other users have had the same problem. Interestingly though, check the picture settings on your television and turn on or select game mode. Now, one of the complaints that I had with the system was the notable controller lag. And that was visible when I had the controller and I pressed left. There was a noticeable delay from when I pressed left and the character actually moved left. And I attributed that to controller lag. Now, when we talk about setting the picture mode on your TV, this is actually kind of important, and this will be important to anyone who's playing console games on their TV of any generation. You see, the TV tends to want to do picture enhancements. If it does color correction, sharpening, anything like that, any kind of enhancement that it adds also introduces delay. You wouldn't notice the delay normally because when you're watching a show, they just delay the audio to match the delay that they would experience in the picture. But when you're playing a video game, since you have a controller where it's registering inputs, you're pushing the fire button and you're seeing the character on the screen actually fire. If there's a delay or a noticeable delay from pushing that button and the action happening on TV, you would interpret that as a delay or a lag. Now, I know that the delay on the controller is true controller lag because I was doing the testing on a gaming monitor. It has a very low refresh rate and it does not introduce any lag at all. But the secondary reason I know is because when I connected my Xbox controller and played the same games, there was no more lag. Gamestation Pro controller has lag. Xbox controller, no lag. The problem is the Gamestation Pro controller. However, for those of you who also are playing on a TV and also have those performance enhancements turned on, you're introducing a secondary layer of lag. So you've got controller lag to start with and another layer of lag. Of course, you're going to be disappointed as a consumer in the product. So they're going ahead and telling you, just turn it to game mode. That reduces all of the lag that's introduced by the TV and you will get a much faster gameplay experience. Again, that is true for anyone who is playing any kind of console on a TV. If you have your PlayStation 5 or your Xbox plugged into your TV, try switching it to game mode and I'll bet you notice an increase in your frame rates and your performance on that game. Perhaps you'll start getting a little bit more competitive at those games, those Call of Duty games or those first-person shooters as well. They then go into the actual update procedure, and interestingly, they use the video from Gen X Grown Up to show here's how to update the firmware, which is not surprising, I guess. Maybe they have a partnership. So we don't need to get into how to update your Atari Gamestation because it's already been well documented. The thing that I want to know is, how well does this SD card support actually work? So let's talk about that. The first thing that you need to know is that prior to the update, to get into the SD card, you had to actually power cycle the system. So you turn it off, turn it back on again, and when it turned on, it would say, do you want to go to the Gamestation system or do you want to go to the SD card? You don't have to do that anymore. Simply pressing 2 buttons on the controller will pull up the SD card menu and toggle you straight into there. Also, you can press the home button on the controller and go back into the game menu to play your retro Atari goodness. This is really important for those of you who are sitting on the couch using the controller wirelessly and you want to toggle back and forth. An excellent and welcome improvement for using it as an emulation console. The next big improvement is folders. Yes, they have added folders. You can now create a folder for your Atari games. You can create a folder for your Nintendo games. You can create a folder for your Super Nintendo games. And they have folder in folder support. So within that folder, you can have folders alphabetically. You can have them by genre. These are my RPGs. These are my action games. These are my fighting games. These are my racing games. And you can do it all in there. What they don't do is sort dynamically. So you can't just say sort by alphabetical, sort by type, whatever. Whatever's in the folder, it just gets sorted that way. But that's where the update stops, simply adding the folder support. So when you're navigating through that menu, you still are missing out on a lot of functionality that you would want in a retro emulation console. Most notably, box art, game descriptions, some sort of way to know what this game is without having to load and play the game. So when you're doing your retro game collection through ROMs, you have a game title and that's it. If you don't know what the game is, you won't know what the game is until you run it and play it. This is a big strike for me because there are other systems out there that can be hacked to run emulation, which do this beautifully with box art and game information so that you know what you're doing. That's a strike. Secondarily, this system is actually a pretty low spec system. You see, it doesn't take a lot of processing power to emulate an Atari, and so they don't have a lot of processing power. Some users have noted that the version of MAME that they're running on here is the same version that they use for a low spec Android powered system. So the question is this a low spec Android powered system? It might be, and if it is, then we can understand what that is. But there are better spec systems out there. The classic Nintendo, the classic Super Nintendo, the classic PlayStation. Those have been hacked and they run emulation quite beautifully with really good controller support. Which leads me to the question from the beginning. Do I regret sending my Gamestation Pro back? And if I had a chance to get one, would I get one now? The short answer is still no. But I'm going to add a little asterisk next to that. You see, there are a lot of people who are still buying these Gamestation Pros and they love them. And if you're buying a Gamestation Pro and as a Gamestation Pro, as its core functionality as an Atari retro game system, if that satisfies you, then the ability to also play your emulated retro games on the system is a bonus. But if you're looking for a system that you can buy to use as a retro game console, to emulate all of your favorite consoles from that era, this is not the unit that you're looking for. There are generic units that you can get from Amazon, and I'll put some links in the description to ones that are half the price and twice as good. They emulate better, they emulate more consoles, and they do the console emulation just better. The experience is better. There is some promising news here, and you see the Gamestation Pro supported emulation right out of the gate on that SD card. It wasn't good, but it did it. And a lot of people had questions to say, is this an accident that this does this? Or is it something that the Gamestation Pro will embrace? The fact that we've made it through an update, and the update specifically adds functionality to the SD card, which would be specifically useful as a retro emulating system, is promising news. That means that they're taking this seriously and they want to enhance the functionality to further make the customers happy. So in future updates, we probably can expect better navigation. We can expect possibly box art. We can expect it to more clearly show us how to use it as an emulation system. Possibly we'll get some better documentation for which aftermarket controllers are supported and which are not, and maybe even wider controller support. So they are still supporting this hardware, they are still improving on this hardware, and it could get better in the future. But right now, it is still not something that I recommend to you if you're looking strictly for a living room retro ROM emulating machine. Better options still. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video, and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. You'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.